Okay, the next step in building our computer, we gotta choose a CPU to put into it. I'm gonna help you choose one that's good for what performance you need for what you are doing in your task, not overkill and everything like that. As you can see on the left here, we got processor for desktops, processors for servers, processors for mobile, heat sinks, and thermal grease. Um, I'll explain that stuff later. Probably I should explain. I'm going to explain thermal grease right now. It's a compound. Your heat sink, as you should know, extracts heat away from the CPU. CPUs get very hot if there's as they're running because you have a lot of power running through a small area. And as they get hot, you need something to take away the heat from the CPUs, so they won't get damaged. And that's what a heat sink's for. But thermal compound goes in between the CPU and the heat sink, as you can see right here is a CPU in this picture, and it goes between that and the heat sink, kind of like a car radiator, if you will, and it creates a better bond or seal between the CPU and heat sink. Is what the thermal paste does, because air is actually a really good insulator of heat, and so it doesn't actually conduct it very well. So that's why you got the thermal compound. So it all those microscopic gaps, you really can't tell it there. Even though the copper looks flat and the CPU looks flat, there's still imperfections and everything else that you need thermal grease to fill in the gaps. Okay, now that I've explained that, let's get on to desktop, since I'm not going to explain mobile servers. We're building a desktop computer. Uh, Get on to desktop processors here. We got two brands to choose from, AMD and Intel. To decipher over brand wars, there's no reason to hate or like either one for just a general computer, because a processor is going to be reliable. I've never heard of a processor actually just dying unless you up the voltage for overclocking. I'm not sure if it's even possible for a processor to die. I mean, I guess it is possible, but it's such a rarity that it's unheard of. So it is nothing for both companies. It's not like one's gonna have better quality. They're both quality. It's about speed mostly. Intel, you're gonna pay more, but you're gonna get faster processor. AMD's less, but you're gonna get a slower. Also dependent. Sometimes it could be faster. Usually AMD's a better performance for your money. Okay, to get going, explain some of the CPU features. Like I said, manufacturer Intel, AMD are your two processor manufacturers. You have different series. A series APU is AMD's CPU that has a graphics chip built into it, and typically you can have graphics chips built into the motherboard, but these actually have been built into the processor. Intel did that as well. I think AMD was first, and Intel started second with that. But they both have it now, so it doesn't really matter. Athlon is an older CPU for AMD. Athlon 2 times 2. If you've heard of anything about CPUs before, they have cores. Now, a long time ago, they used to have just one core, can process one single thing at a time. Now they have up to 8 core CPUs that can process up to 8 different tasks at one time, which in the long run typically can make it faster, but if the program's not coded to be able to use that many cores, then it's not going to give you any benefit. Like for instance, you see this 8-core AMD processor right here. You would think it's faster than this quad-core Intel, even right here, but it's actually not. It's actually slower than their Intel. Also, you can tell by price as well. It's typically, if the higher price is typically faster, but not always the case. But it's because nothing's really coded to use 8 cores, and even if it is, video encoding programs are typically the only ones that can take advantage of that many cores, and heavy graphics software and different CAD software probably can take advantage. Heavy duty software can take advantage of those cores, but it's architecture and things I don't really even know about that make the Intel processors considerably faster than AMD CPUs, even though they have less cores. They might even have a slower clock speed, the gigahertz you see, GHz, and everything like that. Okay, to get on, like I said, the X2 means 2 cores, X3 3 cores, X4 4 cores. You can see dual core, duo, quad. I mean, you can kind of get the gist of what that means. The Intel processors, one major advantage, like this might be a quad core, but it has hyperthreading. What that means is it has 4 physical cores, but it has also, for each physical core, it has a virtual core. So it actually has 8 threads it can process, but it's not actually 8 physical cores. So it's like kind of like multitasking, if you will. Like you're doing 2 things at once per core versus just 1 thing per core. It's kind of like that's how it works, but that can give a considerable speed advantage on certain tasks. I'll explain that later. And you have all these other processors over here, like up to 6 core AMDs, Phenoms. You kind of learn, like you'll know the Core i series are Intel, the FX series AMD, Pentiums Intel, Phenoms AMD, Sempron's AMD. You kind of learn the socket types you're going to want to learn too. LGA, it's old Intel. You have a 775, that's an old socket. 1155, that's starting to be outdated. I'm not sure how old that is, 3 years old maybe. I'm not entirely sure. 1156 never really caught on, I guess. That kind of, 1155 kind of killed 1156. Not much to do with that anymore. 1366 came out when I built my computer, but unfortunately I didn't have enough money at the time to get it. Oh, I did, but my mom convinced me not to buy it, and that was a mistake. Like I said, sometimes it's worth spending a little bit extra up front to get better hardware, but it's a life lesson. And 2011 is Intel's newest, right there, and it's the top of the line Intel. Yeah, then you can see AM, which AMD, I mean, should be fairly obvious. It's AMD processors, different sockets. Some sockets are backwards compatible, like I know AM3 should work in AM3 Plus. I've actually done that in my parents' computer, put an AM3 CPU and an AM3 Plus motherboard. So you kind of have to, that's what forums could be for, to help you understand, like, make sure you can buy a cheaper, older CPU, put it in a newer motherboard, and maybe upgrade later on, something like that. Then you have the cores that are like names that you could understand, like Sandy Bridge E. I'm pretty sure it's the newest Intel. I'm not sure if it's Zambezi or Bulldozer. I don't remember. For AMD, it's exactly the newest. You see Zambezi's right here. That's one of their new ones. I don't know. I think that might be their newest one out, but I'm not 100% sure on that. Now, to explain what you need for a processor, if you're just doing web browsing, Facebook, like I said, you might like once a year edit a video. You want to edit photos. I mean, like just your basic red eye, not Photoshop, but just like basic crop and edit photos, stuff like that. Just your basic tasks, like a general computer is gonna get, like, if you're fairly you're not doing gaming could work, but what I'm saying is for all those tasks, a dual core processor is all you need. It's cheaper, it's fine, it's perfect and speedy for all those basic tasks. You can always get a faster CPU and those tasks will be faster, but it's not really cost effective in a way to get that. If we look over here at power search right here, we will, once it loads, okay, any day now. Okay, they got power search, like I said, explained how to use that before, but if you haven't watched my other videos, then you can learn here. It's a very useful thing in Newegg. Like I said, you're not limited to Newegg, but I like Newegg because stuff like power search makes it very easy to find the CPU or product I need. for my specifications. Like, you can sort out all the different, like, if you know you only need a dual core, then just click all the dual core stuff. Like I said, if you're building a brand new computer, like right now after this video, I would go for a newer technology, spend a little bit extra, get the newer stuff, because like the Core 2 Duo here is an old CPU, and it's just like it might be cheaper, but it's definitely not worth getting, because like in a couple years you won't be able to buy any parts next to eBay, and then it's going to be used and it might not work, and trust me, it's going to be more pain than it's worth, unless you already have one and you're just upgrading and slightly upgrading. Okay, it was kind of hard to explain unless you know like the sockets and everything what you want in a CPU. Like I said, dual cores for all your basic. Anything above that, gaming, you really want a quad core now. It used to be dual core is fine, but all the new games are starting to take advantage of quad cores, especially a game like Skyrim, have really CPU dependent in that game. So a quad core can really up your frame rate and give you less lag in that game, or no lag at all, really, if you have a quad core versus a dual core in that game more specifically. Even games like Battlefield 3 as well can take advantage of quad cores and such like that. So it's really in your best interest to get like a quad, so you can have multi-core here. So we're just gonna not select anything because I want to show you like price range and stuff like that. Just go through. You can 64 bits, like pretty much. I think that's standard in like 99% of processors now to have 64-bit support. So that's nothing to worry about. Nanometer is really, the higher the nanometer, 90, the older it is, and the more power it's going to use, and usually the slower as well. But not always. Like hyper-threading is like what Intel has. Like I was explaining before, hyper-transport is part of AMD's like thing. It's something with memory. I think like you can do integrated graphics. Like if you want a basic computer, you can go choose one that already has integrated graphics built in to the processor. That could save power in the long run, save on your energy bill. That could just make your computer more efficient overall. You could choose wattage, like you can choose the lowest wattage. But overall, I'm just gonna click search because I already never do that. I look at benchmarks and stuff, so I kind of already know. You can choose ones that have a heatsink included, which if you're just been on a basic computer, it's what you want, or not included, and you can buy a heatsink from somewhere else. It's probably what you would want to do if you're building any type of gaming computer. I'm not sure why that happened. I think I must have, I accidentally clicked Core 2 Duo. I just see there are only 2 Core 2 Duo processors left, and they're pretty slow, relatively, to the new ones. But here we have best rated, and as you can see, like you have an AMD best rated, you have Intel's best rated. Right now, I think the Core i5 is your best bang for buck Intel processor performance, because the K means on these processors, they are unlocked, which is good if you're overclocking. If you're not going to overclock, you might as well not even spend the extra money, because you're just wasting money to get the extra feature that you're not going to use. Like this one for $200, it's a very good deal, and it's not going to be, see, this one's 110, but that one, say even if it was, it's 220 without that coupon. It's not going to give you double the performance of this one, so this one's more cost effective than this processor. But this one's just going to be faster and everything. So you just have to kind of decide what you're going to be doing first. Like if you're going to be video editing, I would go above even the Core i5, minimum of a Core i7 CPU if you're going to be like video encoding. Unless you don't care too much about encode times. If you're encoding a lot of video, like transcoding video to your iPod like all the time, or something like that, it would be in your best interest to get a Core i7. It's just going to be faster overall for everything you do on your computer, but the habit should be up to like 50% faster than a Core i5 when it comes to video encoding, thanks to those extra threads, because the Core i7 is pretty much a Core i5 but with hyper-threading. That's the only addition in the Core i7 to the Core i5. Typically, it's not always the case. Laptop CPUs are totally different, so you have to kind of learn around like what they mean. A Core i7 is not always a quad core. Um, that's typically only for laptops. But like in this desktop here, video editing stuff, I would recommend definitely no less than a quad. You really regret it. A quad's like twice as fast for video encoding than a dual core ever is. As I have a dual core on my second computer, tried to encode a video, and it's like 2 or 3 times as long as my quad core. That was like practically the same gigahertz speed. So it's not nice. It's like I said, it comes down to you have to. It's hard to like meet it, blat out all this info and you absorb it. But that's what there's sites for benchmarks. You just like type in CPU benchmarks, you'll kind of see performance, and then you can calculate percentage of how much faster it is, and put in the price, and then see what your price to performance ratio at the current time, and then like converse this to another processor. But if you just want speed overall, then we get something like this or this. It's not your fastest. If you really want to go and you have a ton of money to spend, just go to highest price. I don't think AMD even has ever had CPUs this high. I'm not sure why Newegg's being so slow today. You can get this processor, which they all the time have it stream processor. It's unlocked the core is, so people who get those are stream overclockers. They press the performance, get every spec of performance they can out of their computer, and they pay a lot to do so. And it's a 6-core CPU, and that's the fastest CPU you can buy for a desktop CPU right on computer. They think they have faster for like video encoding. They have 8 cores for servers, but it's slower gigahertz, and it kind of power and everything else is iffy right now at 8 cores. That's probably why Intel hasn't got a consumer 8-core yet, while AMD has, and it's kind of the consumer misconception that the 8-core will be faster, but it's actually slower than Intel's 4-core, which is pretty bad on AMD's part. I mean, but AMD is also a lot cheaper, so it just comes down. You have to look at the benchmarks and see what you're going to be doing. For if you're gaming, definitely probably want a quad core. If you're video editing and want at least the Core i7 with the 8 threads or a 6 core. If you really want, like, this 6 core is not any more than like 5% slower than this one, and you're talking it's double the price. So I mean, this one is, if you want good, like, excellent performance at a fairly decent price, it's this the 6-core CPU. Otherwise, if you want to save a lot of money, this has a better performance to price ratio for sure than this one does, because you're not getting double the performance, and not typically even 50% more performance. You might get I think like 25% more performance, something like that. So instead of waiting, what is it, like a half hour for a video to encode, or say 2 hours for a video to encode, you wait an hour and a half to get the 6-core. It depends how much you do, if it's worth it or not. If you like encode video every single day, you think about it could save you 5 to 10 minutes every day. That's like a possible hour every single week of your time you're gonna save by having this 6-core. Is it worth saving an hour of time? They get those uploaded quicker or encoded quicker, then that's up to you. You gotta put all these things in there. Like, this is the CPU I want to upgrade to. It's just the cost ratio to this, and it's like, even this, you have to overclock this one a lot to even get double the performance, and it's just, I need a new motherboard, RAM, and CPU to upgrade in my computer. This been like minimum like $700 to only get double the performance. It's not really worth it. And it's like, video encoding doesn't even take that long right now. Like, it's a little bit slower than real time, but it's just I only wait like 10 minutes and my video's done. So it's like, I can wait the extra 5 minutes not to have to spend $700. But if it's your first computer, I mean, you might as well, and it will last longer. I mean, I don't know if there's anything else I can say about processor performance, but definitely go to forums. Like I said again, you can explain what you're gonna do, what you're doing on your computer, and people like I explain a little bit, but I mean it's hard for me to get everything out there. And go to forums and tell them what you're gonna do, and they will explain back to you like what the best processor you should get is. Like, get this one, like give your budget, and they will show okay, this processor is perfectly within your budget and gets really good performance. If you want to learn how to overclock, you can get a cheaper CPU and then up the performance to the more expensive CPU at really little cost. So it's you have once you learn all this stuff, you can get very cost effective for all these parts. I think that's all I have to say. If you have any questions, comment below. I'll try to answer what I can. Please subscribe if you want to see more of these videos. Thanks for watching, and continue on to the next video on power supplies.